Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking something literally all of us experience, but almost never actually dissect with this level of scrutiny, and that is the daily commute. Specifically, we're diving into the Trivandrum transit logs. Now, on the surface, everyday city traffic might just seem totally mundane, right? Just a blur of brake lights, honking horns, the usual grind. But when you actually break down the data within these logs, they reveal a fascinating and frankly a pretty terrifying escalation of danger hiding right there in your rearview mirror. So let me ask you this directly. How well do you truly know the dangers lurking in your rearview mirror? Think about it. When you check your mirrors on your drive home tonight, what are you actually looking for? I mean, most of us are just glancing to see if we have enough room to change a lane. But as we go through these logs together, I really want you to start thinking about situational awareness on a completely different level. Because out there on the road, the difference between a totally safe commute and an absolute catastrophe is often measured in mere inches, or worse, in intentions. Okay, let's dive right into this with our first entry. It's dated May 1st, smack in the middle of the 1631 rush hour near the Infosys signal on NH Road. The logs actually capture the vibe perfectly with this quote. Traffic flow is often compared to a dance, but yesterday afternoon it felt more like a high-stakes game of Tetris. The observer describes this fleeting moment of beautifully disciplined geometric alignment just past the signal. You had a Hyundai Venue leading the pack, a Mahindra Thar holding down the left flank, and the observer's car sitting right in the pocket. Everybody was moving in perfect sync, keeping their safe distances. It was one of those rare, beautiful moments of highway harmony, but just like in any high-stakes game of Tetris, the pieces can drop unexpectedly. Section 1. Glitches in the traffic matrix. Because that perfect alignment, it absolutely did not last. The harmony was violently shattered when what the logs refer to as glitches suddenly arrived. In just seconds, two intruding motorcycles decided to treat the national highway like their own private closed-circuit racetrack. And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer geometry of the danger we're talking about here. Notice the disciplined driving from the Venue and the Thar, a steady, very comfortable 3-foot clearance. That right there is your safety margin. That's what actually gives a driver time to react. But then look at the intrusion. A heavily faded Bajaj Pulsar carrying a pillion rider literally squeezes through a non-existent gap. We are talking about a heart-stopping 1-inch clearance. The logs call this an airbrush squeeze. It was so close and so aggressively tight that the driver of the Thar literally had to jolt their vehicle forward just to reclaim their own space and avoid a scrape. But it gets crazier because it wasn't just the one bike. Hard on the heels of that Pulsar came a Yamaha R15 V3, also hauling a pillion rider, executing the exact same wild stunt. The logs document this totally chaotic, real-life road rash-style leapfrog sequence. First, the faded Pulsar pins itself right to the Thar's tail while hanging tight on the Venue's left side. Then, the R15 swings way wide to the left of the Thar to just blast ahead. And for the grand finale, the Pulsar executes a high-speed, air-filtering maneuver directly between the Thar and the Venue. They were literally threading a needle at high speed, using multi-ton vehicles as their own personal obstacle course. Section 2. Airbrushing death on NH Road. Now, we need to bring this back to reality and transition from the adrenaline of that maneuver to the actual real-world consequences. Because let's face it, the highway is not a video game, and there are absolutely no reset buttons when you're airbrushing death at those speeds. The logs make an absolutely crucial distinction here between everyday lane splitting and an airbrush overtake. When riders squeeze into a 1-inch clearance right at a junction exit, they are not just cleverly beating traffic. They are systematically erasing absolutely every margin of error for themselves and, more importantly, for the drivers around them. Just think about the physics for a second. A single, tiny twitch of the steering wheel from the Thar or just a tap on the brakes from the Venue would have instantly turned this airbrush stunt into a catastrophic multi-vehicle pileup. Section 3. Mid-air docking in the dark. Let's move to the next entry and see how this danger builds. Because if you thought a daytime traffic squeeze was risky, wait until we jump to May 5th. It's 21:20 at night, pitch black, heading toward the Chaka Elevated Highway on NH66, opposite Luvu Mall. Now, this specific stretch of the Salem-Kochi-Konyakumari Highway is totally infamous for its complete lack of functional streetlights. I mean, it is a void. The only light out there comes from the flashing headlights and the red tail lamps of the cars themselves. And in this terrifying darkness, riders who are already hard enough to see become practically invisible unless you've got your high beams blasting. Yet, against this pitch-black backdrop, our observer witnessed something they described as looking less like commuting
and more like a scene from a low-budget action movie.
Let me walk you step by step through exactly what happened in the dark out there. So, a Yamaha R15 with a pillion rider zips past the observer, staying about one electric pole ahead. The pillion rider keeps looking backward, clearly waiting to give a signal. Then, a Bajaj Pulsar pulls up alongside the R15. And this is where it gets totally surreal. Step 1, the connection. The pillion on the Pulsar just extends a hand out toward the R15. Step 2, the dock. Their hands literally lock together while both motorcycles are cruising at highway speeds. Step 3, the visual. Illuminated only by the observer's car lights, in that pitch-black void, it literally mimicked two jet fighters docking for a mid-air refuel. I really want you to focus on the staggering reality of this math for a second. 5. That is 5 human beings balancing on just 2 wheels between the 2 bikes, physically holding hands while traveling at over 60 kilometers per hour in the dark. And get this, the Pulsar was dangerously overloaded with 3 individuals crammed onto a single bike. That alone heavily compromises the bike's braking and balance. The margin for error here is 0, literally 0. If either rider hit a single pothole or even had a slight wobble, both motorcycles and all 5 people would have been dragged down onto the asphalt in an instant. Now, up to this point in the logs, we've been looking at extreme recklessness, right? Thrill seekers treating the highway like it's a playground. But I want to shift gears and ask you a very different, much more serious question. What happens when the danger in your rearview mirror isn't just a chaotic, reckless stunt? What happens when it is silent, deliberate, and highly calculated? Section 4, the coordinated surveillance shift. This brings us to, honestly, the most chilling entry in the entire Trivandrum transit logs. It's May 6th, right in the central business district. And here, the narrative pivots entirely. The danger shifts from the accidental pileups caused by thrill seekers to intentional, highly coordinated surveillance. Now, what's really interesting about this timeline is that we aren't looking at a split-second highway maneuver anymore. We are looking at a sustained operation. Phase 1, the initial contact, happens right between 14:15 and 14:16 near the statue signal. But the absolute smoking gun here is Phase 2, the reacquisition. Nearly 20 minutes later, at 14:33, near the SBI Treasury, the exact same vehicles reappear perfectly positioned behind the target. That 20-minute gap, followed by a deliberate, perfectly timed reemergence, that is the absolute hallmark of a target being actively tracked. Section 5, the Statue Spencer Pursuit. The logs detail this highly calculated pursuit moving right through the Statue-Spencer Treasury Triangle, which, by the way, security professionals will tell you is a remarkably high sensitivity zone in the city. To truly grasp how sophisticated this was, we need to look at the specific vehicles involved. We've got a Honda Activa scooter, registration ending in 39X, paired up with a Royal Enfield motorcycle, registration ending in 645X. Now, why that specific combination? Well, the logs explain the tactical advantage brilliantly. It mixes vehicle classes. You have the Activa providing nimble agility in tight city traffic, and you have the Royal Enfield providing raw power and road presence. By mixing these classes, a surveillance team can constantly switch who has the lead position, making the tail far, far less obvious to an untrained eye. If you just see a scooter in your mirror, and then 10 minutes later a motorcycle, your brain doesn't register them as a paired team. And the behavior of these two vehicles completely confirmed that they were professionals executing advanced surveillance tactics. First, they used a leapfrog formation during the initial contact to track the target without bunching up and looking obvious. Second, they utilized precise gap management, staying just far enough apart so they didn't look like they were riding together, yet they were moving in perfect synchronization with the target's pace. Third, they engaged in a loitering pursuit. And finally, the ultimate giveaway, a classic brake contact maneuver. The second they reached the Treasury signal, both vehicles abruptly broke formation and instantly disappeared into the heavy traffic flow to avoid detection after their surveillance leg was complete. This wasn't some random coincidence. This was a highly organized tracking operation. Section 6, surviving the urban transit. So we've gone from the geometric chaos of the May 1st rush hour to the terrifying dark highway stunts of May 5th, and finally to the chilling, calculated surveillance of May 6th. And this brings the focus directly back to you and your own daily drive. How exactly do you survive the urban transit when the threats out there are this varied? So the crucial point here is actionable awareness. If you are ever checking your rearview mirror and you spot repeated registration numbers tracking you across time and distance, like that Activa and Enfield appearing behind you across multiple turns or time intervals, you must change your routine immediately. Do not, under any circumstances, head directly to your home or your office. You never want to lead a tracking team right to your safe spaces. Instead, you continue driving to a well-lit public area, or better yet, straight to a police station, and you report that suspicious activity right away. As the Trivandrum transit logs clearly show us, the road is a dynamic and sometimes incredibly hostile environment. Whether it's from the sheer, unpredictable recklessness of an airbrush overtake or the silent, chilling calculation of a coordinated pursuit, the ultimate takeaway from these logs is that surveillance and danger itself thrives on the target's lack of awareness. So I'm going to leave you with this thought as you head out for your next commute. Do you truly know who is driving behind you today? Keep those mirrors checked, stay sharp, and never stop paying attention to the details. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Stay safe out there.